I started acting in 1979. I think this was 84, 85 when I got the job. I had done a bunch of plays that had done well. I did a play called Buried Child by Sam Shepard. And then I did a couple very small parts. And I did a part in Heaven's Gate, which was a disaster. And I worked on Gloria with John Cassavetes, which was great. I love him, and it was a chance to get to know him. And that was sort of it. So it was really, I just started. I did Wolfen, that's true, yeah. And another thing, FX, which I didn't like. So I was really nowhere, and nobody knew who I was. And the audition was really good. I was not happy when I went in there, and something clicked, and he picked up on it. And whenever we were in scenes for the rest of the shoot, for the whole shoot, he would just come to me once in a while and say, just remember the audition. He didn't really talk about anything else. I mean, I almost never had a conversation with him. We never talked about anything. Once in a while, he was really cool about having me do it a way that I felt more comfortable after I did it the way he's. I guess, I don't know. There's something very upsetting about the whole thing and sad, and I remember I used to write this thing down a lot. I'd write over and over again, left-handed. I'm dead, they're all dead, nothing really matters. You know, so to take away a lot of the sort of judgment about stuff. I mean, I think I have a lot of sad, I don't know, things I do are probably a little unusual, but I try not to pay much attention to that stuff. There was one thing I did do, I'll be back in frame. I kept a journal. I also did a thing where I guess I did more than I usually do on most things. I kept a journal where I wrote everything left-handed, and I wrote all the notes that were on the toilet paper that they use in the film, where they figure out who I am, and I put the teeth marks on a toilet paper piece, and I send it to Lecter. I did all the writing on that, and I practiced a lot, and I wrote a lot of sort of like journals as me being this other guy, and a lot of that was pretty interesting. But you know that Michael created a lot of, I don't know whether the word is tension, but sort of energy on the set that made people sort of frightened of me and uneasy with me, which helped a lot in some ways. I mean, I don't know if it would have been any different if he hadn't done that, but it's just sort of what he did, which is, I love that about him. I mean, you get a lot, I mean, as an actor, you're very susceptible to any sort of influence that's around you. So it's not, I don't think you want to be looking for more. I tend to want to keep that at a minimum. And what I do is not that different. I mean, I don't always do this kind of movie. So if you compare what I do in this movie, in Manhunter, to other movies, it's not that different. I sort of talk the same way, you know. The idea that Michael was going to make that the way the whole thing went, that was helpful. Like, I would travel on different airlines, stay in different hotels. I never met anybody in the cast. The only people I talked to were John Caglione and Doug Drexler, who were the makeup guys, and I didn't talk to them much. And I talked to the AD, and that was it. And there were memos sent out that if anybody bothered me or talked to me or called me by my real name, that there would be repercussions, and it's like, which I was sort of interesting to do that. And they had a PA walk in front of me and behind me everywhere we went in the studio, so I wouldn't run into anybody. Michael Mann got a lot of sort of biker tattoo artists to come to the studio and just draw on me. So I worked out a lot for the movie. I gained a lot of weight and built up a lot. So I'd spend a lot of time at the gym, and then I'd go back to the studio and they'd draw on me, then I'd go back to the gym, and then I'd come back and it was really irritating, to have, to my skin. I mean, my memory was that, I'm not sure when it was. I think after, when I first saw the first screening, I think I didn't know that he was not going to use the tattoo. And it didn't really bother me, and I asked him later, I think that night, I said, why did you not use the tattoo? And he said, it trivialized what you're doing. It's not necessary. Which I thought was pretty ballsy. Because that was sort of I've seen I haven't seen this movie a lot, but one of the things I know, sort of watching it and also talking a little bit to Michael, is that he didn't want to make it one of these movies where the audience is on the edge of their seat and you get all these fake scares. It just sort of builds up and up and up in a very sort of quiet way, which I thought was pretty effective.
But Francis. Francis is gone. Francis is gone forever.
But I was just really into it. I would have done anything he wanted, and I did a lot of, they waxed me. It was really painful. I mean, tears were just coming down my face because I had very heavy body hair, and they thought, well, that'd be better. We'd have to shave him every 3 days. But I ended up blisters all over me. It was just all the eating I had to do and all the lifting, and I just spent a lot of time alone. I really didn't see anybody. I didn't know anybody down there. I didn't know any of the actors. Because it was the last night of shooting, and they shot that scene where I get killed early on. They used all this blood, which has Caro syrup or as a main ingredient, and then they went off and shot other stuff, and they said we'll come back and get more shots of this, and they ended up never coming back to get me. So over the course of laying there for hours, I stuck to the floor, and then when they shot a scene where the state troopers came in. I guess I've talked about this before, but they used real state troopers, real North Carolina state troopers. And when I heard them coming, I breathed, I hyperventilated for a while, and then held my breath for a really, really long time. And they were like real cops, and they saw me on the floor, and they said, I heard them saying, he's not breathing. I think they really thought I was dead. Which is pretty funny. I held my breath for like probably 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. And then when they had to get me off the floor, it took them quite a while, a lot of boiling water, and then to get my costumes off took hours. Because each layer of my costume was also soaked with the blood, and the blood was stuck to me. And I love doing this kind of work. It didn't really bother me. And Michael would also shoot crazy hours. We would shoot 25, 30 hours straight, and then take off 5 hours and go back and shoot again. I just found it really exciting, and it was, the people, Dante Smiotti was incredibly good DP and would talk to me and about what they were trying to do, and I never really. My memory is that it was not that tiring. It was hard to eat a lot. I had to eat 5 meals a day to get my weight up, because I was like almost 240 when I did that. I'm under 200 in general. I have no idea what they were doing. At that point, I was not that technically oriented. I started making movies about 5 or 6 years later, but the one thing I remember too, that I remember mostly, was that they had green. They highlight a lot of stuff in green during my scenes. And I remember asking them about that, and they said, you won't see the green so much, it's just sort of a feeling you get. And the green is a disturbing color to have in a movie, I only met Brian Cox like 5 years ago. Brian's a great actor. I can't imagine, again, I think he's by far the best person playing that part who's ever done it. The only time that, one day I was in my room and Michael came in and said, D, he always called me D. He said, D, I really want you to meet somebody. And so he took me out and we walked down these corridors and came into what I think was the makeup room. And there was the whole crowd of people there, and Michael said, D, I want you to meet Lecter. This is Brian Cox. And I didn't even see him. I didn't even look up. I said, I can't meet people. And I ran out of the room. And I never met him. Well, I met him there's a movie out now called Anomalisa that I'm in, and we did it as a play in California in 2005. And at that point I'd never met Brian, and he came backstage with, who's that Scottish actor, Billy Connolly? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they came back and they hung out, and you know, I spent probably half an hour with him. And then I met his wife, Brian's wife, about 6 months ago when the IFC did a screening of Manhunter. I mean, he's just a great actor, and he makes me laugh. He makes me laugh in that movie.
You know, if you don't want to talk, that's okay. But I hope you will, because you're very direct, and I like that, and I like what you have to say. Now, touch your face. I want to know whether you're smiling or frowning. I guess I want to know whether I should be quiet or not.
Yeah, I mean, Jo and I knew a little bit. I think we went to dinner once together. I thought she was great. You know, and I know her a little because her kids are sort of the age of my kids, and I sometimes run into her. I used to run into her at athletic events on the Upper West Side. I don't know. I was just, it's really hard to do blind, and she really seems blind. When I was working with her, it was like, it was sort of fucked up. I mean, it was really kind of amazing how she did that. And I don't know, it was really fun working with her. I like that first scene where I come in when I first meet her. Well, how they did that scene was they had a cage, which they started with, and they built a set inside the cage. So if the tiger did get loose, he wouldn't run, you know. But the only really way out of the cage, if the tiger did wake up, was directly toward the camera. So Joan and the guy, the handler, are like here, the door is here, and I'm way the fuck over there, in the other side of the room. And there's a way to get out over there, and just before we shot, they screw-gunned the door shut. So that if something did start to happen, the two of them would get out very easily, and I'd be stuck in this cage with this tiger. And it was scary, because they kept saying, you know, we sedated him, but it's a wild animal, you never know how much to give them, you could kill them if you give them too much, so we have to keep him sort of on the edge of consciousness, and so nobody drop anything, and we shot for a long time. It was not very comfortable. The one where she and I make love, and then she's asleep, and I put her hand on my mouth, on my cleft lip, and get sort of upset. That was the scene that I thought was most important, that I do well. I mean, I'm not in it that much, and most of the scenes in it I loved. It was really fun. And there was one scene that they cut where he and I take Reba to a gas station to get gas in the car. When I come back out, the grease monkey is looking up her skirt or down her shirt or something because he realizes she's blind. And I pick him up and I throw him through a window. But they cut that scene. You know? I mean, the one scene that I'm disappointed they didn't shoot, which was a production problem, was that what happens in the script is that I get shot and the house burns down and they find a body in the house, but it's not me, and you don't realize that. So then the movie cuts back to Florida at the end, and the whole thing starts over again. I break into their house. I don't know if that's in the book or not, but that was the scene. I think we were going to shoot that, but then I think there was budget issues.
Do you imply that I'm queer? God, no. Before me, you were a slug in the sun. You are privy to a great becoming, and you recognize nothing. You are an ant in the afterbirth. It is your nature to do one thing correctly. Tremble. But fear is not what you owe me. No, Lowndes, you and the others. You owe me all.
I mean, Michael made me do like 50 takes. of the scene where I say, before me you're a slug in the sun, you know, Lowndes, you owe me, you don't owe me, say you owe me all. We did that over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I would do like 50 or 75 push-ups between each take. I mean, it was crazy. Shot for hours and hours. But that was one of the first, I'm trying to remember what, the first scene we shot was the shot where I ripped the dashboard because I imagined her kissing that guy I was giving her a ride. So that wasn't the first scene, but that scene where I confront Freddie Lowndes, we did a lot of times. I mean, I had never met him before. I see him around these days a lot. He just, again, makes me laugh. He seemed really scared, which is helpful, you know. Yeah, I thought I'm pretty good at this, you know. And then people responded to that. I mean, there's a story that I've told before, but I was in LA around the time when it opened, and I was in a supermarket, and someone came around the corner to my aisle and looked up and saw me and left their cart and ran out of the store. I mean, it made me a person that people knew. I mean, I direct now my own stuff, so I actually love the movies I make, but of the stuff I've done for other people, that's probably the best thing I've done. I mean, Synecdoche, New York is also great with Charlie, and this new thing in Amelisa, but I mean, it meant a lot to me to do that movie, and you know, and it was a really fun, I wouldn't say easy, but it was pretty simple doing that job. I mean, it did medium. I think the problem was that De Laurentiis was having financial problems, so there was not a lot of money for distribution. This is my memory, that it didn't get distributed that great. I did go on the Regis and Kathy Lee show, though, and they asked me to leave in the middle of the interview. Kathy Lee was sort of being a drag, sort of making fun of me. I said, you know, I'll do the show, but I don't really want to be. I don't want people to think of me as a serial killer. I just want people to see me as an actor like this guy. And so when I came out, they said, and here's the serial killer, Tom Noonan. And I'm like, okay. And then they would ask me questions. And Regis is a cool guy. And I would they'd ask a question, I'd think for a second, and she'd say, he's going crazy. And finally I turned to Regis and I said, what is her problem? You know, I'm being very normal here, and I don't know why she has to do this. And they just cut. They cut to commercial, and they said, thank you for coming in. I was only, you know, like, that's my Regis and Kathy Lee story. He was very sweet to me and funny, and he's this little guy. And right before we did Manhunter, I had been up for this part called Maximum Overdrive. And I'd also read for Blue Velvet for Dennis Hopper's part. So I got to meet him then. And then they did Maximum Overdrive, and I auditioned for that and got the job. But how they picked us is that they took the top 20 people that had auditioned for the different parts, and they put us in a line in a room, men and women. I can't remember any of the people there, but there were some people that I think had done well. And De Laurentiis came in and looked at us all, and then he walked down in front of us. He said, you yes, you no, you yes, yes. And he picked out the cast in front of the other people in the cast. So then for some reason, I guess even though I was going to do that movie, I auditioned for Manhunter, and I guess they talked him out of having me do Maximum Overdrive. No, I'm just sad that, you know, I love Michael's work, and I did do Heat, which was really fun, even though it's small, but I've always missed working with him again.